Today's discourse. Um, the topic of today's discourse is the difference between um, the word just escaped me.
Superstition.
Yeah, the difference. Thank you, Reverend Tara. The difference between superstition and religious practices or ritual. So, in order to address this particular topic, we need to talk about what is superstition. So, superstition has a lot of definitions, but it's essentially, you could call it an illogical belief about what has caused a certain event. It's a belief in chance. Um, it's based in large part, superstition, on fear and ignorance and a lack of understanding as to what is truly behind the cause and effect, the alpha and the omega. There's a bunch of different superstitions that are popular in our culture, and I certainly won't address a lot of them, but one of them I'm particularly familiar with because I was born on the 13th, and Friday the 13th. A lot of people, particularly in this country, believe that Friday the 13th is a very unlucky day and number. And in fact, Hollywood uh, basically rode on the coattails of this superstition, and they developed, as many of you know, a whole series of horror films, starting with Friday the 13th and then a bunch of sequels after that. Um, so that's a superstition. We have another superstition in this country where, you know, don't let a black cat cross your path or that's going to give you bad luck. The interesting thing about this particular superstition is that it doesn't exist in the same way in other countries. For instance, in Egypt, they believe that all cats are good luck, including black cats. And this may be based on their tradition going way back to Egyptian times where cats were revered by the Egyptians. But in any event, in America, black cat, bad luck. Egypt, black cat, good luck, and it varies from country to country. Most cats in China are good luck, prosperity. Um, and you can go on with the different superstitions that exist for humanity. One of them I wanted to point out because I find it interesting, and you see this a lot with athletes. Um, Tennis players, for instance, they'll bounce the ball a certain number of times before they serve. And it's always 3 times or 4 times or 4 times, 5 times. And then they might have tics where they're rubbing their ear or pushing their hair back and doing something with their hand on the racket, but they do it every single time before they serve. Michael Jordan is responsible for a fashion trend, and a lot of people don't know this, that was based on superstition. So back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, basketball players wore short shorts in the NBA, the Professional Basketball League. This occurred all the way until the time of Michael Jordan. And as some of you may know, Michael Jordan went to the University of North Carolina. He won a college national championship with the University of North Carolina and then left early to go to the NBA. So Michael Jordan's superstition was that as long as he wore his University of North Carolina basketball pants, he was going to win games and win championships. So he gets to the NBA, and what does he do? He wears his University of North Carolina basketball pants and he puts the NBA pants over them. The problem is the NBA pants weren't big enough. So you could see portions of the University of North Carolina pants under them, and they were a little confining, too tight. And so Michael Jordan asked the manufacturer of the basketball pants, Champion, he said, I need you to make these pants bigger, baggier, and longer. And it was simply to allow him to wear another pair of shorts under those pants, again, due to this superstition. So they did, and for actually quite a while, Michael Jordan was the only one wearing these long, baggy basketball pants. But it eventually was picked up by other players. They thought it was a fashion trend. They bought into it, and now, as people know who watch NBA basketball, everybody wears long, baggy basketball pants. And this was all the result of a superstition that Michael Jordan had. So, what is the foundation of superstition, and how is it different from spiritual practice or ritual? Well, you could argue there's a lot of different reasons why people have superstition. Again, fear, ignorance. But they all boil down to one big thing, which is a sense of lack of control that people have. And because of this lack of sense of control and the desire to regain some control, they put power into things or situations or practices which they have created or which they have heard about, and in their own mind they've created this positive effect between doing it and the outcome. So for instance, people way back in the Middle Ages felt lack of control, and in order to gain some control, what did they do? They carried around a rabbit's foot, and they put it in their pocket. This was based on the belief that rabbits were lucky, and if you carried one of their hind feet in your pocket, some of that luck would rub off on you. And if something lucky happened in the person's life, they'd say, "Oh my gosh, it's because I'm carrying around this rabbit foot in my pocket." You have these traditions where, at marriages, we have superstitious traditions where people throw grains of rice at the bride and groom. And that's based on, well, if we do this, then in the future, if they want to have kids, the bride's going to be able to have a number of healthy kids. And that's all because we've thrown these grains of rice at them at the time of their wedding. So this is a reach by humanity to regain control of their lives by putting power into things which really don't have that power. As we all know, here at the Spirit of Lotus, and as we teach, the greatest manifester of power is you. We are all co-creators with God. The reality of the situation is we can create anything that we want in our environment. Everything around us is a mirror of our soul. You can use all the cliches like we are the captain of our own ship, we are the director of our stage, but the bottom line is we have the power. And instead of looking for it without us and placing power on an object like a lucky rabbit's foot or on rice, or if you find a lost horseshoe, then you'll have years of good luck. We should be placing this power where it belongs and recognizing where it belongs, which is ourselves. Co-creators with God. The Apostle Paul said in Corinthians that we are co-workers with God in the field. Christ said that I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the cause of everything that was, is, and ever shall be. And everybody that comes after me, what did he say? Has all of my power and more. He was telling us that we are the same as him. We can create anything and everything that we want in our lives. So, if you asked an atheist, what's the difference between superstition and religious practice, I suspect most of them would say nothing. There is no difference. A lot of atheists like to say that, you know, particularly with Christians, that Christians believe in an old man with a beard who sits on a throne and is floating around on the clouds in the sky, directing everything that's going on in our lives. That's not based in fact, that's not scientific, that is nothing more than a superstition. And so if you pray to that God, you read your scripture, you do contemplative exercises, that's nothing more than superstition and will get you nowhere in your life. It's not just atheists who say this. There's a lot of people out there, agnostics and others, who really attribute a lot of spiritual practice to superstition. And frankly, if we are to be honest in our heart of hearts, there are some people who are religious who do things that really could be put in the category of superstition. But there is a difference between superstition and true ritual or spiritual practice. True ritual or spiritual practice, the whole purpose of it is to enlighten you, to bring you to a recognition of who and what you are. That you are God. That you have, like I said before, the power to create anything and everything in your environment. It is a recognition through true spiritual practice that you are unified with everything that exists. You don't just have brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers and children. You literally are them and they are you. If you're sitting in a chair right now, you are that chair and that chair is you. If you're standing on the floor is you and you are it. Every grain of sand in the world, you are it and it is you. It is through spiritual practice and discipline that you come to this realization, that you allow yourself to walk up that mountain to achieve true enlightenment and to get off this cycle of rebirth. There's a lot of different foundations for spiritual practice and ritual which do not exist in superstition. So one of those is discipline. If you are to do spiritual practice, you must be dedicated. You must have discipline. This is no different than really anything else in your life. Take brushing your teeth, for example. In order for brushing your teeth to actually work, you have to brush your teeth. That's why parents are telling their children, brush your teeth in the morning, brush your teeth in the evening. If you're not brushing your teeth, I can assure you, you're going to develop problems with your teeth and your gums. It is a discipline that you must do. If you want to be in good shape physically, you must be disciplined with exercise. There's no person that I know, or anyone would know, who doesn't do any exercise and are in really good shape. Who lazes around all day sitting on the couch, eating whatever they want, and are in good shape. It simply doesn't happen. You need discipline. I've said this before in different homilies, but one thing we know about people who are the best in any discipline, it doesn't matter if it's academics or auto mechanic or music or athletics. What the studies have found is that these people already have talent. There's some people like if you wanted to be a football player and you're not physically gifted, it doesn't really matter how disciplined you are. You're not going to be a professional football player. But what the studies have found is these people who are the best at whatever there is, they have these innate gifts. If you're Pavarotti and an opera singer, he was born with a beautiful voice. But it doesn't end there. They also happen to be the most disciplined at whatever their discipline is. Michael Jordan, basketball, was renowned to practice more than anybody else. And he was more talented than anybody else to begin with. He was there at the gym before them, and he left after them. And you can go on with different people in academics, in science, in whatever it is. Yes, they're naturally gifted, but they put in the time, they put in the effort. The same is true of your spiritual practices and how this is different. Superstition is, oh, it's going to happen. If I just carry my, lucky rabbit's foot around, something good's going to happen. And then when something good happens, you attribute it to the rabbit's foot, and so you got to carry it more and more. That's not discipline. Discipline, for instance, with meditation, as Reverend Tara encourages all of us, you do it at the same time, every single day, in the same location. And you build up a vortex of energy through that disciplinary practice. Anybody who's gone to a temple where they meditate all the time, the Buddhist monks, or a church where they constantly have services and they pray all the time, you can feel the energy in those locations. That is because they have built up this vortex of energy through practice, through discipline. Discipline in your spiritual practices allows you to have focus, concentration, attention. It brings you into unity with time. You are more aware of time, more aware of being in the present, because with discipline, you're doing things at a certain time and for a certain length of time every single day. Discipline through your spiritual practices is also a way to build up faith. So a lot of people say you either have faith or you don't have faith. There's a contingent of people who don't buy into that, including myself, that faith can be built up. It's just like anything else. But if you don't do your spiritual practices, then it necessarily becomes weaker. You can read stuff by Emmett Fox and other spiritual leaders who talk about this. Doing your spiritual practices increases your faith. Perhaps the biggest difference between superstition and ritual or spiritual practices is ritual and spiritual practices, they empower you. Superstition empowers something outside of you. So think about that for a second. Is it the rabbit's foot that gives you luck in your life, or is it you? Is it the horseshoe that gives you luck in your life, or is it you? Is it other people throwing grains of rice at you at your wedding that allows you to have healthy children, or is it you? It is through spiritual practices and ritual that you come to this recognition that you are the power, you are the source. You are the greatest talisman that ever existed in the universe. Greater than any amulet, greater than any crystal, greater than any structure created in nature. You literally have with faith and a recognition of your power to move mountains. This is not just a statement in Scripture. This is a reality. Do most people come to that reality? No. And that's why you need discipline and practice again to achieve it. You're never going to come to this true reality of who and what you are, of your great power, without spiritual discipline and practice. Another great difference between superstition and spiritual practice and ritual. Look at all the benefits that spiritual practice and ritual provides to you. Meditation. There are scientific studies on this. You don't have to believe in God or not, but if you meditate, there's scientific proof that it lowers blood pressure, lowers your heart rate, calms your emotions, decreases stress. Superstitious practices do not do that. Spiritual practices and ritual provide you with a positive outlook of the universe. They move you away from negativity. Spiritual practices provide you with creative imagination. They provide you with freedom from limitation. A lot of the reason why we can't move mountains or we can't do great things in our lives is because we've convinced ourselves in our own mind that we are incapable of doing it. I can stand up here all I want and tell you that you are no different than the chair you're sitting on, that you are one with the chair, that it is it and you are it. But how many people really believe that? With our eyes, we look at the chair, it's a solid structure. We look at our body, it's a solid structure. We don't buy into the physics that at the micro level, there really is separation between atoms, that these things really aren't solid, that our body really isn't solid. We've told our mind that we cannot merge with that chair. I cannot stick my hand through that chair. It is an impossibility, it'll never happen. These are limitations we've placed on our own mind, and it is through spiritual practice and discipline that we remove ourselves from these limitations, free ourselves from these limitations. Every religion has people who have done miracles, who most of the world would not believe that that could happen. You cannot walk on water. You cannot manifest a jewel in the palm of your hand. You cannot do those things. But in reality, you can. And it is through spiritual discipline and practice that you become that reality. That you become what you really already are. All of these gifts are inside of every single one of us. Someone else's victory is your victory. That is why we encourage, be the light up the mountain. You don't have to drag people up with you because they might pull you down. Just be the example. And it is through that example, like any Muhammad, Christ, whoever it is, Buddha, they are that example, showing you how this can be done. And every single one of them talked about doing spiritual practices. Every single one of them talked about how to pray and contemplate. And what you needed to do to achieve this reality of who and what you are. Another difference between superstition and spiritual practice and ritual is, in superstition, you don't really have to do much. Right? As long as you find that horseshoe, you got good luck. As long as you don't break the mirror, you don't have to worry about 7 years of bad luck. If you step on your shadow, then you've got more good luck. It's simple little things that anybody can do. Anybody can do spiritual practice and ritual. But it takes responsibility, and you have to do it. And no one is going to tell you that it's easy. It takes work. Just like anything else that has a great, fantastic, wonderful reward, it takes work. And you must put in the work. But if you do, and you realize who and what you are, universes upon universes will open up for you. No limitation, no separation. Knowledge beyond your wildest dreams. All possibility is what we are. All possibility. So thank you very much for listening, and now we will have about a 10-minute deep level meditation. Thank you.